All right, so right here is our project. I'm gonna run it just so I can show you visually what has changed before I dive into the backend behind it. As you can see here, we have a home page now. The home page has this link, which takes us right back to this home page. You have an NFL section. This will act as like the dashboard for the NFL stuff. You have an NBA section, and within those, you have pages that go to all of the tabs that are recording. These ones don't work because I haven't done anything for the NFL. NBA, I've started with teams and players. And so far, when you click on teams, you just have a list that pops up with all the different teams. When you go to players, you also have players who pop up, and you can see that this is a whole lot more data, but it does load a lot quicker. So I wasn't expecting that. It's almost like an instant load. But I'm assuming that's because it's pulling directly from the database on my device. So anybody who has that script and has the database, it should run this smoothly. Um, but yeah, that's basically what I've done so far. Now I'm going to go into the code section. Let me stop running it. First off, if you go to the launch settings, no, definitely not launch settings. Somewhere down here. App settings. This is the connection string that I have linking to the HAST database. This is saved locally. This is my file path. I would assume most of ours will look similar. But if your data is not loading, make sure that connection string is on a similar path to what you have. You can see here we have a layout page. I'm going to close some of these so it's not as massive to look at just yet. All right, starting at the top, we have a shared folder. And we also have this layout.cshtml. If we double click that, you can see that you have this HTML file. You have your header, which is basically what shows up at the top. And if you look at it, you have all of the NFL section, NFL teams, players, stats. This is basically where those links come into play. And then this renders the body of whatever file we have selected. And then you have your footer, which it was very minimal, but this is basically going to show and manipulate everything within that header section and the footer for the most part. And then when we work on an individual page, let's say we do the NBA players page, all I did was click on this one, and it's the CS HTML that pops up. This is basically what renders in the center of that header and footer. And you can see you have a H1, which basically just you have a heading that's of the class 1, so it has a specific height. And then this basically says, hey, if we have 0 players, don't put anything in a table. But if we do have players, make the table. This is the table head, so all of the column names, and then the table bodies for each player within the player's list that's in the player model. You'll go ahead and connect the player.name, player dot whatever property is within that class. And now we're going to go here to this backend section. You have NBA players.cshtml, and then you have NBA players.cshtml.cs. I don't know who named this, but no words. Never mind. But basically, you have a backend and you have a front end. So on the back end, this one has your list of players. This is something built into the MVC framework that lets you basically just connect your connection string. So a lot of this is going to be repeated and we're not going to understand it too much, but deep down you have to know that, hey, this is just the connection string. And then once you move into this onGet method is basically your main. Like when we do our normal projects and we have a main method that runs the normal project, that is exactly what this onGet is. So as soon as we click one of these buttons, As soon as I click Teams, that onGet method is ran, and that's what brings everything up. And you can see that it's basically it's connecting to our connection string, and then you're querying all of the rows. This is basically where if you're in SQL, you have your select all of the rows from whichever table that is, and then we're ordering it by name. Once you get to that point, it basically uses this SQL command as a built-in method to query from this connection string exactly what this was, and it basically reads it and it assigns it to a player object, which is basically what we create here. So you have your class in here, and then you have the methods to connect to the database and then bring those database records into individual rows. And it's basically the same thing for that was the NBA players, but when I go to the NBA teams now, I'm going to double click. We're in the front end, and then I'm going to double click on the back end just so they're both open. But this is the very same concept. This is just the teams now. And then if there's no players, leave a little paragraph that says, hey, there's no teams. And then down here, you just have your column names and your actual records when it goes through the list of teams. I think for the most part, that's all I've done. I've tweaked with the CSS just a little bit. So if we go to the shared pages, no, WW root pages, and go to CSS, you'll see that there's a little bit of changes in here. And that's basically just giving us all the design aspects, all of the front end GUI stuff. So a lot of this is within a div, but the div needs to be centered. These need to be bolded a certain way, and the underlines come in all through CSS. This picture is constricted to a certain size and whatnot. And then all of this stuff, it's just everything has to go through CSS if it goes to styling for the most part.